On an evening in 1935, at a large hotel in the state of Pennsylvania, New York, thousands of people suddenly appeared. Among them were company directors, bankers, lawyers, salespeople, dentists, accountants, architects, and even people who had come from India and Cuba. What were these thousands of people there for? In 1935, during the Great Depression in the United States, many people were unemployed and did not even have enough to eat. However, even on empty stomachs, these thousands of people still spent money to buy tickets to listen to a man named Carnegie give a lecture. So what did they come to hear about? Greetings from ancient wisdom to all of you. Listening to a valuable book every day will help you live an enlightened life and elevate your thinking to a new level. Today, we will analyze the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This book conveys Carnegie's core philosophies, helping you learn his training program without going to the United States. His courses at that time were always packed with participants. Why was he so famous? During that era, the University of Chicago spent 2 years researching and discovered a phenomenon. Most people, after many years of life experience, realized that what they learned in school was not enough to achieve success as defined by society. Therefore, the movement of adult education spread across the United States and continues to this day. The pursuit of success in American society and the emphasis on adult education can be attributed to Dale Carnegie because it was from him that this movement began. Many influential political and business figures in America, such as Rockefeller, the oil king, Hilton, the hotel magnate, Chrysler, the founder of the Chrysler Automobile Corporation, and many U.S. presidents like Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy were once Carnegie students. Warren Buffett, the famous billionaire, received a certificate from Carnegie's course in 1952 and affirmed that it was the most important degree of his life. He always hung this certificate in the most visible place in his office. Next, we will dive deeper into the core content of Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Human beings find it very difficult to reflect on themselves. Carnegie understood traditional Eastern culture well. In his lectures and books, he often cited sayings such as the cleverness of the world is knowledge, and understanding the hearts of people is literature. Every profession has its own rules of operation, and human relationships also have their own rules to follow. Carnegie said that the weakness of human beings lies within their very nature. We should not resist it, but recognize it, accept it, and make use of it. On May 7, 1931, a massive manhunt took place in New York that shocked the United States. The criminal, nicknamed Two Gun Crowley by the media, after a fierce gunfight with the police, was finally captured. After Crowley was arrested, Police Commissioner Mulroney declared that Crowley was one of the most dangerous criminals in New York's history. So how did Crowley view himself? In a letter to a friend, he wrote, "Beneath my exterior is a weary heart, tired but kind, harming no one." Crowley was sentenced to death, and even when taken to his execution, he still defended himself. This is the result of self-defense. Carnegie once discussed this case with prison warden Lewis Laws, who supervised criminals like Crowley. The warden said that very few criminals in prison ever admit that they are bad people. They, like you and me, have the same human nature, so they justify their actions, whether breaking into a safe or pulling a trigger. They try to find a suitable reason to explain their actions. And whether the reason is logical or not, they still believe they are right and do not deserve to be imprisoned. Think about it. If even criminals who break the law believe they have done nothing wrong, then what about the people around us? In 99% of cases, no matter how serious the mistake, people do not blame themselves. That is why it is very difficult for humans to self-reflect. We should not easily criticize others, because in social communication, criticism is often useless. It only triggers resistance and makes people look for ways to justify themselves. Criticism is also dangerous, because it hurts self-esteem and may even create resentment. The secret to persuading others is to find what they want. A friend of mine had a young child preparing to enter kindergarten. Normally, when children start school, they cry and refuse to go. But his child was different. When she heard she would be going to kindergarten, she was excited. Every day she looked forward to it more than her parents did. The reason was that from when she was just over a year old, every time she accomplished something, my friend would praise her. "Sweetheart, you are so smart. With such talent, you will definitely go to kindergarten one day." So in her mind, going to kindergarten was always something wonderful, and she eagerly looked forward to that day. When she finally got to go to school, she became more excited than anyone else. As children grow older, they develop their own thoughts. Many parents have tried all kinds of ways to teach their children, even scolding them. But does that really work? Wanting children to always agree and think the same way as parents is unrealistic. Instead of forcing them, it is better to think about what the child wants and how to fulfill that desire while still meeting parental expectations. Children are like that, and adults are no different. When you need to persuade someone, don't rush to talk only about your own needs. Before speaking, consider what the other person wants and what will motivate them to willingly do what you wish. Human actions stem from their desires. The best way to persuade others is to evoke their strong desire. Andrew Carnegie, the Steel King, used this psychological strategy to achieve great business success. Once, when Carnegie and George Pullman were competing for a contract to supply railway cars for the Pacific Railroad Company, Carnegie used this tactic. At the time, both Carnegie's company and Pullman's company wanted the contract. The two sides competed fiercely, even lowering prices to the point where there was almost no profit left. Eventually, Carnegie proposed to Pullman the idea of forming a new joint company. Pullman was interested but not fully convinced. Then Pullman asked, "If we cooperate, what will the new company be called?" Carnegie immediately replied, "Of course it will be the Pullman Luxury Car Company." Upon hearing this, Pullman smiled. This conversation changed the history of the American steel industry and officially made Carnegie the Steel King of the United States. No matter who they are, their own name is the most important word in the world to them. When communicating with others, speaking about what they like is often effective. The person we are speaking to usually does not truly care about us or our problems. They care more about themselves, their desires, and their worries. Their toothache is more important to them than a war happening far away. The small issue they are busy with worries them more than a magnitude 10 earthquake in a distant country. People who are skillful in communication know how to give more praise and less criticism. Very few people in this world are completely rational. Most carry biases, doubts, fears, jealousy, and pride. No one wants to change their opinions, so do not easily point out other people's mistakes. The most important thing for people is not whether they are right or wrong, but whether their self-esteem is threatened. When challenged, people tend to defend beliefs they have held for a long time. If you want to prove something, do it gently, without making the other person lose face. For example, if someone says something incorrect, even if you are certain they are wrong, try saying, "What you said is different from what I previously thought. Perhaps I was mistaken. Let's find out what the truth is." Inside every person is a basic need to feel important. Everyone believes they are better than others in some way. The way to enter someone's heart is to let them know that they are truly important and truly capable. So how do we do that? Praise them. In Aesop's fable, there is a story about the contest between the north wind and the sun to see who was stronger. They decided to test by seeing who could make a man remove his coat. The wind blew harder and harder, but the man only held his coat tighter. Then the sun appeared and shone warmly on the man, making him feel hot. Finally, the man voluntarily took off his coat. The lesson is that when people feel warmth, they relax. One of Carnegie's students, Mrs. Jacob, applied this method cleverly. The construction workers under her management worked very well. But after finishing their work each day, they always left construction waste scattered everywhere and never cleaned up. One day, after all the workers had gone home, Mrs. Jacob cleaned the entire site herself, organizing all the leftover wood neatly. The next morning, she called the supervisor and said, "I didn't expect you all cleaned up the construction site so well last night. I am truly touched. This makes the site look beautiful. The neighbors even said I am lucky to have such a good team." As a result, from that day on, the workers always cleaned up the site after work and neatly stacked leftover materials in a corner. The education expert Mr. Dao Han Tra was once the principal of Duk Tai School. One day, he saw a male student hitting another classmate. He immediately stopped the behavior and told the boy to meet him in his office after school. After school, when Mr. Dao returned to his office, the boy was already waiting. He took out a candy and said, "This is your reward for coming here early." Then Mr. Dao continued and took out another candy. "This is also a reward because when I told you to stop hitting, you immediately stopped. This shows that you respect me." The boy was surprised and accepted the candy. Mr. Dao continued, "I just asked your classmates and learned that you hit him because he was bullying a girl. This shows that you have a sense of justice." Then he took out the third candy. At that moment, the boy began to cry and said, "Principal, I was wrong. Even if he did something wrong, I should not have hit him." Mr. Dao took out the fourth candy and said, "You have recognized your mistake. This is your final reward." Our conversation ends here. For candies, for praises, a gentle yet effective conversation that helped the boy sincerely admit his mistake. Praise is very important. That is why many people, when expressing their thoughts, start with praise but then often use the word but to deliver their message. For example, when parents want to correct their child's careless study habits, they often say, "You are doing great. We are very proud of your progress this semester. But if you could work harder in math, your grades would be better." This way of speaking reduces the sincerity of the compliment and does not help improve the child's attitude toward studying. If we replace but with and, the problem becomes easier to resolve. For example, "You are doing very well. We are very proud of your progress this semester. And if you continue to stay careful and diligent next semester, your results will be much better than they are now." This way helps the child accept the praise without worrying about criticism afterward. When negotiating with others, emphasize points of agreement and do not focus too much on differences. From the beginning, try to make the other person say yes. Do not give them the opportunity to say no. No is one of the hardest barriers to overcome. Once someone says no, their self-esteem forces them to hold on to their position. People who are good communicators always try to get the other person to say yes from the start. This creates a positive psychological foundation and guides the response in a positive direction. A friend of mine works at a bank. After reading this book, he decided to apply some persuasive techniques. He learned how to get customers to say yes. One day, an elderly customer came to the bank to make a transaction, but he did not have a mobile phone and did not want to provide any family contact information. How could the bank employee persuade him? The banker said, "Standing in your position, I also believe this information is not absolutely necessary." The customer replied, "Yes, exactly, I only came to deposit some money." After the customer said yes the first time, the banker continued, "Sir, may I ask, if an emergency happens, would you want your savings here to be transferred to your family?" The customer replied, "Of course, yes. If you have a family contact number, simply provide it to the bank, and we can follow your wishes and transfer the money to your family accurately. That way, the money will not be lost and will be very safe." The customer replied, "Yes, that's right." After answering yes 3 times, he finally agreed to follow the banker's advice. Socrates, one of the wisest philosophers of all time, used what method to persuade others? The Socratic method, created by him, is actually based on the strategy of making the other person say yes. Socrates often used a skillful approach in conversation, leading people to nod in agreement. Then he continued asking a series of questions, making the other person keep agreeing, and eventually, the other person would draw a conclusion completely different from their original viewpoint. Make others feel noble, and they will willingly help you. 300 years ago, the scientist Galileo said, "You cannot teach another person. The only thing you can do is lead them to discover it themselves." Compared to ideas imposed on us by others, do we not believe more in conclusions we reach on our own? If the answer is yes, then why should we force our ideas onto others? Skillfully guiding someone to reach their own conclusion is the intelligent way. No one likes to be forced to buy something, and no one wants to be forced to do a job. People prefer the feeling of making their own decisions. Every human action usually has two reasons, a noble excuse and the true motive. If you want to change someone, help them think of a nobler reason. During World War I, U.S. President Wilson decided to send a trusted representative to Europe to act as a peace mediator between nations. Upon hearing this, the U.S. Secretary of State at the time, William Bryan, was extremely excited. As a pacifist, he wanted to serve his country and leave a historical legacy. But unexpectedly, President Wilson sent someone else instead, Colonel Edward House. Colonel House did not want to disappoint Bryan, but he still had to personally deliver the president's decision. Colonel House said to Bryan, "I heard that I will be the peace envoy to Europe." Bryan immediately showed disappointment, because he originally wanted to take on the role himself. The colonel then said, "The president believes it is better not to draw too much attention. If a famous Secretary of State like you were sent to Europe, people would speculate why. It would definitely cause major disturbances." His implied message was clear, and Bryan felt pleased. Colonel House understood human psychology well and knew how to use people's weaknesses. This method is not only for high-ranking politicians, but even a supermarket manager can apply it. At a grocery store, an employee often placed price tags incorrectly, causing complaints from customers. The manager had reminded him many times, but nothing changed. Finally, the manager thought of another approach. He called the employee into the office and appointed him head of price tag inspection. He was now responsible for making sure prices matched products. The new responsibility and title completely changed the employee's attitude. From then on, he worked carefully and responsibly. It sounds naive, doesn't it? But in reality, people often behave very naively. Even those in high positions are skilled at using such weaknesses to manage others. We can also learn and apply this. Dale Carnegie practiced these principles throughout his life. Across eras, the study of human nature has always been a major topic that never ends. The theories related to human behavior are rich and diverse. In our busy lives, we often fail to fully recognize our circumstances and the unfolding of our fate. Only when we reduce the scale of time do the patterns of destiny gradually appear clearly before us. Dale Carnegie had this ability. Sometimes he analyzed deeply and objectively the motives behind people's actions. Sometimes he was emotional, unable to forget the experiences and stories of his life. His way of observing people was both close and detached, neither humble nor arrogant. Every word and sentence in his books reflects what he observed and learned from social interactions. These experiences were not isolated incidents from his own life, but came from the shared resonance of thousands of Americans. He distilled life experiences and transformed them into profound insights into human nature, explaining the principles of dealing with people. Whether an NBA player who grew up in dark neighborhoods or Silicon Valley talents who started in garages, or even political leaders who changed history, all have applied these simple principles. The essence of the American dream is to achieve a better life through personal effort, and Dale Carnegie's own life is proof of practicing these principles. In his book, Carnegie made a sincere reflection, saying, "Looking back on my life, everything becomes clear before my eyes." Dale Carnegie's career was full of ups and downs. His life itself is a touching story. He grew up on a small farm in Missouri. At the age of 12, he saw a train for the first time. Yet by the age of 46, he had traveled the world, from Hong Kong and Asia to Hammerfest in the Arctic north of Europe, leaving his footprints everywhere. The boy who once picked berries in Missouri for extra money, earning only 5 cents an hour, later became one of the most sought-after trainers in the world. The boy who once walked through fields of snakes eventually flew around the world, meeting with royalty, presidents, and business leaders. All of them, from the powerful to the famous, became his students and friends. In his youth, Carnegie faced many difficulties in education. Disasters continually struck his family's small farm. Floods happened every year, and the piglets they raised kept dying from disease. The bank even threatened to seize their property because of the mortgage debt. In despair, Carnegie's parents decided to sell everything and move the family to Warrensburg, Missouri. At that time, Carnegie went to school in town. Boarding cost only $1 a day, but even that was unaffordable for his family. He had to walk at least 5 kilometers a day to go to school and return home. Among the 600 students in the school, only 6 could not afford to live in town, and Carnegie was one of them. He felt deeply ashamed of his family's poverty. The more self-conscious he became, the more desperate he was to prove himself at school. He quickly realized that the most outstanding groups were football players, basketball players, and winners of speech and debate competitions. Knowing he had no athletic talent, Carnegie decided to win a speech contest. He spent several months preparing, practicing every day. Even with such preparation, he repeatedly lost. He became extremely discouraged and even thought about taking his own life. However, he persisted. Then one day, he won, not just one contest but every contest afterward. After graduating from college, Carnegie became a salesperson for a correspondence course, but despite his enthusiasm, his sales results were disappointing. Eventually, he decided to go to Omaha to find a new job. After arriving in southern Omaha, he found work as a salesman, selling bacon, lard, and smoked pork for a company. Carnegie studied tirelessly from books, rode horses to meet Native Americans, and even played cards with them to collect payments. If a grocery store ordered bacon and ham but had no money to pay, he allowed them to owe and came up with a solution by taking a dozen pairs of shoes from their shelves as repayment. He sold the shoes to railroad workers and then returned the money to the company. In just 2 short years, he revived the struggling sales region, taking it from near the bottom to the top in revenue. The company wanted to increase his salary and promote him, but Carnegie refused and resigned to move to New York, planning to make a living by teaching. But what would he teach? Looking back on his college years, he realized that his confidence, courage, composure, and business communication skills all came from training in public speaking. All the other college subjects combined were not as effective as this course. Therefore, he asked the New York YMCA for an opportunity to open a public speaking course for business people. They agreed but did not pay him, because similar courses had failed before. Carnegie agreed to teach on a profit-sharing basis. Within 3 years, his share of earnings reached the equivalent of $30 per evening. The course quickly grew through word of mouth among members and later expanded to other cities. Carnegie began lecturing across the country and even traveled to London and Paris. Many business people sought him out because they felt existing learning materials were too academic and impractical. In the beginning, Carnegie only wanted to teach public speaking. But his students were all business people who had not sat in a classroom for nearly 30 years. They wanted immediate results and hoped what they learned could be applied the very next day in business discussions and negotiations. Therefore, Carnegie's courses had to be fast and practical. He developed a unique training system that combined public speaking skills, sales techniques, human relations, and applied psychology to produce outstanding results. In 1929, the U.S. economy collapsed due to a financial bubble, leading to the Great Depression. The financial and real economy were devastated, and people's confidence fell to the lowest point. In 1937, Dale Carnegie's book How to Win Friends and Influence People was published. This book has endured and inspired millions of people for more than 80 years, creating a major revolution in American adult education with a lasting influence to this day. Dale Carnegie not only encouraged people to pursue success but also reminded readers at the end of the book that for personal happiness and success, family is far more important than career. It may even concern life and death. He devoted an entire chapter to sharing 7 principles for achieving a happy marriage and family. First, do not complain. Second, do not try to change your partner. Third, do not criticize each other. Fourth, sincerely appreciate your spouse. Fifth, for women, the most important thing is attention to detail and care shown through small actions. Sixth, do not forget courtesy and respect for your partner. Seventh, between husband and wife, intimacy is very important and should not be neglected. In 1955, Dale Carnegie passed away. In a conversation before his death, he once said, "I never imagined that I would change the lives of millions of people." Thank you for following today's content. This concludes the summary and explanation of how to win friends and influence people. If you have personal thoughts about the book, feel free to leave a comment and share. If you find my content valuable, do not forget to share it with friends and family. Warm regards and see you again.